Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today is another guest day. We have another great guest. Today we have Bill Troy. Bill Troy is a consultant, author, serial entrepreneur. Bill, why don't you, thanks for being on the show. Why don't you share a little bit about you and what you do and how you add value to the world?
Sure. So these days, my main focus is on our marketing firm, Civilis Marketing, and probably actually the book I wrote to support that initiative. And it's on the idea of interpersonal relationships in the modern digital era. And the book talks a lot about what digital marketers are doing and the companies that use digital marketing are doing that hurt those relationships. And so I think that's really relevant in the networking world to make sure that you're not letting the tool, be the tail that wags the dog, and you're still really building a real human relationship. So we do that on the marketing side with our clients, but the book is also designed to kind of help people stay on the right path and do that whether they hire us or not. So that's really the focus, is the book Clicksand and the marketing, Civilis Marketing.
Can you share a little bit about Civilis? I mean, I know you and I have talked.
Yeah. Sure. Well, we focus there on, the short version is we turn relationships for a company into a process. I find that so many companies have processes for everything: hiring, firing, interviewing, even sales, right? Okay, here's our process. We do the assessment and the proposal, and you track all those things. You have steps for all those things. Yet when it comes to relationships, when there isn't a sale imminent, when you're just trying to build rapport with someone over time, maybe they're not ready to buy for you now, maybe they can't buy what you sell for another 2 years. But what do you do in that window? And most companies don't have a process for that. They just kind of hope it magically happens. They just try to hire some people that are good networkers, quote unquote. But we've realized that relationships can have an actual set of steps and a process you follow, a set of goals, where you're trying to get to, so that when they're ready to buy from you in a couple of years, you're top of mind and they know you, they like you, they trust you. So we really focus in that gap on building relationships as a process for a company to move those forward so that you lay the foundation for that sale eventually.
So more or less what you're doing is keeping your clients in the know relative to things, their prospective clients, things like that. Is that a fair statement? Yeah,
really what you're doing is figuring out what the life of your potential customer is all about and what they need from you. It may be personal interactions. They may need you to know that they like fly fishing and want to talk about that, not just want to hear about your latest product all the time. Or they may need to know that you care about the same sort of issues they care about, whether that's politics or charities or whatever. And so you're finding ways to build a personal relationship with them, and whatever that is for them is what you figure out how to find those commonalities.
Yeah, interesting, because I think years ago, or a couple of years ago, when you and Kim were first coming up with this, the analogy you use, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've got a pretty good memory, but it's not perfect. But you analogize it to the guy who stands behind the president or the Secretary of State saying, okay, here's the dictator of Zimbabwe, he lost his wife, here's his second wife. Kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, so that's the service that we provide frequently. Is you have people that you need to have better relationships with, and if you had all the time in the world, you'd really know all the things that are happening in their life and what's important to them, and there just isn't enough time for that. So a lot of times the service we're providing is arming you with those anecdotes and with those commonalities to remind you of what's important to that person, and also to remind you that it's time to reach out to that person. Hey, you haven't talked to Jack in a certain amount of time, and we just noticed that he just did Pelotonia, and so hey, reach out and congratulate him on that and ask him how it went. Is he sore? So care about that person. So we help make that process, and also even sometimes help to tell you even what to say.
I guess my question would be, one, do you have competition? I don't hear, it's not like, hey, there's 6 banks on the street. There aren't 6 people I know that do this. Is there anybody else that does this or anything close? And if so, how do you separate yourself from that competition?
Yeah, we don't really know of anyone that's doing what we're doing, which is really digging into that. It's a soft skill in business, right? But what we find is that you can definitely quantify it. And we end up working with people that understand the value of relationships. It's not just, hey, let's just have relationships with people. It starts by identifying who the right relationships are, who are those nexus points, who are those key people in your network to make sure you're leveraging and working and spending time with the right people. So there are people that kind of focus on that theoretically, but we actually get down and help you actually do it. And that is a bit unique. So there really isn't any competition from that standpoint. And so that means that it's not well known. And so our biggest issue is reaching people that care about relationships and understand the value of them. And so we really have a quick little discussion with folks, and we can tell immediately if they value relationships. And this is where you and I have spent a lot of time talking about this. You're one of those people, and a lot of the people that you and I know are, but everyone isn't. And so it's really kind of a quick filter. Do you really care about people? And do you know who's important to you in your life? And if so, we can make that work. And they immediately sort of sign up or sign off. And that really helps us.
Okay. Well, obviously you're in a networking type business.
Yeah.
Oh, I assume you network. What's the biggest challenge you find as far as not just this, but really in business, trying to get yourself networked? What's the biggest challenge you've had to deal with?
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge I have personally, I think we all have, and all of our clients have, is staying focused. We have a tendency to all want to meet new people and think that networking is exchanging more business cards with more people and building your list. And what we always find with Civilis when we analyze any business is that it's actually about a few people. It's the 80-20 rule, right?
Yes.
So it's a matter of going back and focusing on the right people, fewer people. So you don't need thousands of people in your network. You probably don't even need hundreds. A lot of businesses can grow as big as you can imagine with 50 of the right relationships. So we sort of end up constantly pushing back and saying, okay, are you spending time with that new shiny person that you just met that you think is really going to be something great? Or are you going to go back and talk to that person that has already given you $100,000 in business over the last 2 years?
Right.
And you're kind of tired of talking to them because you don't know what else to say. Well, let's go back and focus on that.
Okay. You coach your clients through that then?
Yes.
Okay.
We actually analyze their personal network and figure out exactly who is important to them and make sure they stay focused on those people. It's not that you can't grow your network, but we find it almost all the time, all the people you need to know. Yeah. And what you're doing is you're ignoring them because they're not fun and interesting anymore, or you don't know what else to say because you've already done your pitch.
Right.
And instead you go talk to new people all the time. And in fact, what you really should do is go back and go deeper with those people that already are important to you.
Well, I guess it's no different than the adage in sales that we make, there's a better return on our existing clients than new ones. It's kind of
always. Yeah. Yes, exactly. You've done all that. You've done all that work to start the relationship, and then why go start yet another one when you've got one already going?
Right. Okay.
In fact, I'll give you a great little anecdote example that we see all the time. If you're a service business, for example, and you've had a client that was a successful client of yours, you probably worked with 3 or 4 people at that company, maybe more. Right. And what we find is that you'll go off and try to meet a new company like that one, when instead those 3 or 4 people that worked with you at that business and love you have now 2 of them have gone on to some other potential company that could buy your service and you didn't even know. You didn't even follow up with them. They already worked with you. They already loved you. You love them. And instead you're going to an event and meeting a brand new person completely out of the blue and ignoring the people that already love you and not following up with them, not even congratulating them when they move, and certainly not keeping a relationship going. So that's the kind of stuff that we all fall into as a trap. If
I recall from your book, Clicksand, or maybe it was a conversation I had, you shared that story. One of your initial clients with a research company was somebody that you knew and had moved on, and there was already a relationship there, correct?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we sort of map out every business and industry has a certain life cycle for customers, what the customer's life is like. And so I have 2 companies. You mentioned the market research companies. So we've had Troy Research for about 20 years. That was my Inc. 500 company that we started in the late 90s. And we started Civilis Marketing about 6 or 7 years ago. But we learned, for example, in the market research space, we deal with a lot of media companies there that people turn over a lot in that industry. They go from job to job and they're in between jobs on a fairly regular basis. It's just a common part of that industry. And what we learned was when we wanted to deepen a relationship with someone, the moment in that relationship to do that was when they were between jobs, because no one wanted to talk to them. They couldn't buy anything and they didn't, no one was calling them because they didn't, want to get hit up for a job. So that was our chance to deepen the relationship with that person. And then when they got their next job, bam, they really, appreciated that we built that relationship with them, and it really paid off. So that's that industry. But you can find that pattern, whatever the right pattern is for your industry, and then understand, okay, this is why I'm reaching out to that person and what we're trying to accomplish in that relationship.
I mentioned the book Clicksand, and that is your book. Hopefully that's your favorite book, because people ask me what my favorite book is. I name mine, and they kind of give me a curious look, and it's like, listen, if it's not my favorite book, then it's nobody's favorite book, right?
Yeah.
And I'm most likely to have that as a favorite book. So we'll exclude that. But beyond that, what other book would you point to? Would you recommend to people? Maybe not your best necessarily, but something that's really worthwhile for an entrepreneur type to read?
Yeah, well, Clicksand starts with a Gilligan's Island anecdote, so it's got to be great, right?
Right.
I would actually, when I get asked this question, I always go back to a classic now. It's funny to say that, but I believe in the 80s it came out. Jack Stack wrote a book called The Great Game of Business, and it was just mind-blowing for me because he made the case for transparency, and he proposed the idea of open book management that he used in his company, where he shared all of his financials with all of his employees. And it was such a radical idea at the time to be open and transparent, and it transformed their company. I mean, they just skyrocketed in performance when everyone was able to see what they were contributing and how they were making a difference. But it was just almost scandalous at the time to propose that. Oh my gosh, how could you let everyone see every number in the company?
Right.
But what I love about it, even to this day, when those kinds of ideas are a little more common, is the idea of being honest and authentic. And I think there's a bigger pattern there that we need more of in this world. So even though the book is 40 years old, it's an idea that I still love. Just say, let's just treat people with respect and treat them as adults, and that will actually be successful.
And the name, Jack Stack, name of the book again was
The Great Game of Business.
The Great Game of
Yeah,
Business.
he actually set it up. Not only did he do open book management, he created a game out of it in the company where they kept score and everything. It was a fascinating idea at the time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, while we're on that, and I like to do this somewhere in the middle so it doesn't get caught at the end, or we don't forget your contact information. How could people get a hold of you? Want to talk or network or whatever?
Yeah. So, in fact, the book, we have a website for the book called Clicksand, CLICKSAND.net. So they can get information there about the book, about me speaking. If they want to go directly to our company, it's Civilis Marketing, which is CIVILIS marketing.com. Either one of those places, they can reach out to us or me. And I always love talking about, real human relationships. So that'd be great.
Okay. Well, good.
Yeah.
Back to relationships, and I ask this often. What's your networking pet peeve? I could probably guess from reading Clicksand, but go ahead.
Well, in fact, this is a great one because I think this is where one of the cases I make in the book is that, unlike other forms of marketing, whether it's signage or business cards or direct mail, a lot of times the digital marketing tools can work against you, can actually ruin all the work you've already put in. And one of my pet peeves is when you go meet someone at a networking event and maybe you get a business card or maybe you get their email address in some other way,
right.
You just throw them into your email drip campaign. You start sending them that helpful newsletter.
Right.
And they didn't ask for that. And what that means is that you immediately see them as a target, as a mark, right? To be manipulated and coerced into clicking, and it can actually damage the relationship. So I hate it. In fact, I just wrote a blog article the other day about a guy I met who's through a mutual friend. We went hiking, right? And my buddy introduced me to this other guy. We were going to meet on the hiking trail, and we just met on that personal level. I started getting HubSpot email junk from this guy the next day after we got introduced through a hiking friend, right?
Yes.
So I know that guy sees everyone in his universe as a target to be manipulated, and it's like he's wearing a leisure suit and like, hey, here's another guy I'm going to use my little keyword magic on, right?
Yeah.
So don't do that when you meet someone in networking, especially when you're starting that relationship. It does not move the relationship forward.
Yeah, I had this conversation this morning. I've really gotten away from MailChimp and Constant Contact, and I mean, I have those for communicating out events and dates. I don't use it to communicate newsletters and information. I'll send things out one at a time, and it takes a long time to do it. My wife's always nagging me, "Oh, there's a quicker way." Yes, but there's not a more effective way.
Yeah.
And so I can send somebody an email and put in there, "Hey, sorry your football team lost," or whatever it might be.
Right.
Pull in some personal stuff. and it's just so much more effective.
Well, I think the thing too is that it's not necessarily a problem to have an email newsletter. The email newsletter itself isn't evil. It's though that it's a slippery slope or how you put people into the distribution list. It's way different if someone signs up to get it versus you just sign them up and assume, well, they'll just opt out if they don't like it. That's just, that's a subtle difference, but it is huge from a relationship building standpoint of how you think of them and treat them.
Well, you put the onus on them to be the bad guy all of a sudden.
Right, exactly. Well, and yeah, you have to force them. It's like, well, you know, I'm hitting everyone up at the holiday party about my business investment idea, and they can always say no if they want. You know, grandma can say no, even though I've cornered her and I've got, you know, like, no, just don't even do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Beyond that pet peeve, what other networking advice do you have for people?
Yeah, I think be purposeful about it. Don't just constantly just talk to people. Make sure you have a plan. Make sure you know what networking is for your business. And a lot of times it is, I feel like there's too much of a focus on, you know, in fact, this is an analogy that you talk about that I have always loved. And I've ended up writing blog articles talking about your golf analogy too. Don't just walk around and hit tee shots all the time. First shot, and hope they go in as a hole in one. It's the second shot, it's the approach shot, it's on the green, it's putting, it's all those things in between that matter. And so remember that that's what networking really is deepening that network, just not constantly hitting tee shots.
Right. No, thank you.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Somewhere I've got a podcast on that. I know I do. And my kids joke with me all the time because they hear me talking with people about it. They think it's hilarious, you know, like I'm off my rocker or something like that. But they're just young enough. They're too young to really understand how that all interplays, and they'll figure it out one day. You know, oh my God, that was so right on.
Well, maybe they're young enough where they have only new relationships, and they haven't had a 20-year cycle where people come back, or 5 years later, people come back through circling a different part of their life, and all of a sudden they see how it plays out over the long game.
Well, they're young. They're in college or newly out of college, and they're still kind of in that mindset of, hey, I'm smart. I went to a good school. I did well. You know, that's great. You're in a pond now with a lot of people who have all those same credentials.
Right.
Separate yourself, but they'll figure it out. I think we all go through that.
Yes, exactly.
One of the things that has come up over and over on this podcast is the most important thing that we have with respect to being successful in business and in life is relationships and networking. And that's the one thing that is just absolutely not taught in high school, certainly in college, grad school. It's just not taught. Let's talk about you and what would be a good referral for you. How, you know, if somebody's listening, who could they connect you with? What would be a good referral for you? Yeah.
So Civilis, the ideal company for us is one that was built and has thrived on personal relationships, often the personal relationships developed by the founder. But what happens is they reach a cap at some point. Either the founder needs to leave, wants to leave, or they want to grow beyond that founder's personal network. And they can't figure out how to do that because that seemed like a magical thing that was a one-time only thing. So they start looking at other marketing services, you know, like that's where they start to get into the automated stuff, trying to figure out how, when in fact we can deconstruct what that owner did and turn it into a process for the entire company to follow. And we can say, this is exactly why joining Rotary or being a part of AmSpirit or, you know, throwing backyard barbecues, whatever it was that owner did, we can actually make that into a process the whole company can follow because we'll help them understand what they accomplished with that process and then make something that scales.
So I would imagine that organizations like, say, like a college or university that's, you know, they've got the donors that are giving $100 here and there, but they've also got the high-end donors.
Yeah.
That would possibly be a good referral for you as well.
Anytime where you understand, the more you have an understanding of what a relationship is worth, and sometimes that's obvious when it's a customer or a donor or an investor, there is an actual dollar amount attached to that. Those people instantly get what we're talking about. In fact, those kinds of customers just need to do more of what they already do, and we sort of help make more of them with our process to say, hey, you can interact with more people this week. In fact, you and I talked about that. With that sort of politician anecdote you mentioned earlier, sometimes we're just arming them with information when they go to an event where they're going to run into people, say, hey, you know, his kid just graduated and he did Pelotonia, and you give them those anecdotes to help work that network. So yeah, it's people that understand the value of a relationship and that it's worth investing in.
Okay, let's. That's a typical client. I guess where I want to talk about is what are some things that you wouldn't be excited about doing necessarily, but you do just as part of the process. I mean, we all want to swing for the fences and hit the home run, right?
Yeah.
What's the single in your world? If I can use that analogy.
Yeah. Well, the single, I was thinking of the one I don't want. Right. So what I would say is the kind that are sort of iffy for us are the ones where they start by bringing us their digital marketing and saying, help me fix this. It's just not working. I need to change my keywords, or I need to buy different ads, and we have to spend time saying, you know, you probably shouldn't be doing it at all.
Right.
And that's really a difficult discussion. And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. So it's a matter of
somebody's made the decision to do it. So.
Yeah. Right. And that kind of stuff is really alluring. It's really magical to think I could just buy keywords and then emails would just show up in my inbox to customers that want to buy. I don't have to, money shows up overnight, the kind of thing. It's a very alluring thing. And sometimes people are really shocked when we say, okay, stop it. Just don't even do that.
Right.
Now we get one of two reactions. One is they say, I was thinking that exact same thing, but I didn't know what else to do. Or they're like, no, we just haven't quite got it down right. Well, okay, if you haven't got it down right, then probably somebody else is right for you. So
right. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on the call today. This has been great. Yeah. I've learned a lot. I hope our listeners have as well. One more time, if you would get us your contact information, that would be
sure.
Great.
Just go to clicksand.net and you can contact me right through there. You can find out about the book and speaking and anything else you want.
And Clicksand is spelled just like it sounds.
Clicksand, like quicksand, only click.
Okay. Well, great. Well, Bill, I appreciate your time. Best of luck, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.